Welcome to Carl and Heather Present,
the podcast where we dive into the insights, challenges, and humor of being married to someone who is nothing like you.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Oh, don't you know it's Carl and Heather Present Marriage Podcast.
It's time for another episode of Carl and Heather Present, the podcast where love is patient, kind, and just slightly passive-aggressive about the thermostat.
Well, here's the thing. Here's why I wanted to start about the thermostat. We'll introduce our guests in a second, but I was talking to you last night about how thermostat issues are a big deal for me in this season of life.
Mm-hmm. You asked me before I went to bed what I wanted it set on. No one has ever asked me.
Because years ago, I had a friend that I stayed with, and she was in the same season of life as I am currently. Creating my own personal summers.
Season of life where you're bursting into flames.
Right. And we stayed together, and she had it on 65, and I froze the whole time. And I thought, I'm not going to make it. And so then when you said the same thing, because you're a little bit younger than me, and you said, oh, we keep it on 74, 75, I thought, I'm not going to make it. No. But fortunately, it's cold here right now, so we got a cold front, so it was fine.
I just put my socks on, I'm fine.
But
you're in perimenopause?
I'm in perimenopause. Jill and I were at a conference this weekend, and the lady said something that resonated with me so deeply. She said, I'm in a season of life where if you hit me with your cart at Target, like you accidentally bump into me, we're going to go.
Yeah.
Like, we might go. And
so it's just a stirring rage.
Do guys have that?
No.
Like
they just kind of
Gary menopause.
Gary.
I hope not. I'm out.
Okay. Just do things like what would a guy named Gary do?
I don't know. I feel like that's really girl centric, but all the female listeners will understand.
It's
just
that fried green tomatoes Tawanda situation that we didn't really think was real, but
we're like, what? She rammed it
those
over and over
of
again.
you under 50, that's a movie.
It's a good one. You should try it.
All right. Focus. Sorry.
Okay,
how are you doing, babe? We just kind of.
I'm doing good. I have been traveling a lot. I just returned from California, and then I got on a plane and went to North Carolina again.
Cool.
But I'm doing well. I am wearing a hat, which is a sign I was not able. I didn't have a ton of time to fix my.
Both of us took over the bathroom this week.
Well, yeah, we have house guests, so
that's it. That's okay. Anyway, well, speaking of house guests, we have one of our dearest friends, dearest and oldest, not oldest as in she's
right.
The
Let's clarify that.
Yep. But we've known you for a long time.
A long time.
When you had your maiden name,
I had that you still call me by.
Yes.
Jill Forbes is our guest today, and Jill lives in Charleston, and she has 3 kids. Will, who's a senior, yay.
Yep, at one time.
All the things. And then Micah, who's a sophomore, finishing up his sophomore year. Yep. And then Lydia, 7th grade.
Correct.
So we have
kids. Yay.
Those of you with girls.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Mostly tier at 13. But
and it is indicative that you're a girl mom, because if you aren't watching, I want everyone to know that Jill has fairy hair today, which is beautiful. And if you don't know what that is, as a boy mom, I didn't. So Google it.
Right.
Fairy hair. Figure it out. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
It's my attempt at cool.
Yeah. So tell us, we know each other from college, right? We've known each other for a long time, but tell us just briefly about your kids and, what life looks like now for y'all.
Live our life in Charleston, South Carolina, which is probably not a terrible place to live.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
Yep. And about 20 minutes from the beach. And we own an axe throwing place.
Okay.
Which
has an amazing name.
Yay. That's the theme of today. Let's just go with that.
Okay, there you go.
Yay. It's called Lumber Jill's because obviously. Which I didn't realize would be so awkward when people call and they're like, oh, are you the Jill? Or my staff likes to introduce today. My name is Micah. I'll be your coach today. And over here we have the Jill.
We have Lumber Jill.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lumber Jill.
Yeah. Really? Yeah.
Do you wear a lumber,
like a flannel,
like a
buffalo check shirt?
I only own one. Yeah. It's not that's weird. We're not like a bar. We're like a lounge. More little mid-century modern than lumberjacky.
Upscale axe throwing.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah. We're not dark and dreary. So so that's my life.
And busy, probably with lots of kids. Yeah. So you have had a complete life change, interruption.
Yep.
Devastation.
In
the last year.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
My husband Heath died unexpectedly last Memorial Day. We're almost at a year.
Okay.
Which seems like 50 years and 15 minutes all in one breath. When we were on vacation with friends in Florida. Okay. We'd been playing pickleball and something wasn't right. And he said he didn't feel good. And, urgent care.
How old was Heath when he passed?
Like 2 weeks from 44. So he was 43. Now caveat before all the wives out there panicked and making appointments for their husbands, which I don't frown upon either. He had a heart attack at 36, so it wasn't our first go around. Did I think it would happen again so quickly? Obviously not. But yeah, so in an instant, you're faced with what you think would. And if I was honest, I think the thing I talked to the Lord most about was give me all the years with Heath. Like this was truly my worst nightmare. Like even losing a child, I was like, no, I can walk through that with him. We will make this together. Sure. We've been through job loss, like all the regular traumas of marriage, and we weathered them well together. And so that was, almost daily in the car by myself. Like, thanks for another day. Give me all the years with Heath. So to be face to face with it was like, oh. Did you even hear me?
Right.
Did you hear me at all? So, yeah.
And we met, like you said, in college, but you and I, Heather and I were in your wedding.
Yeah, you sang at our wedding.
I sang in your wedding.
Yeah. And you didn't want to.
Well, I never want to sing anybody's wedding until afterwards. But it was
amazing.
It was an honor.
It was worshipful service. Yeah.
I remember the song I sang. It's like, pour my love on you.
Which is really interesting. We have a church nearby that puts out great music content. And the other day I'm going through and they did a remake of that song that I literally haven't heard in 20 years. And I'm on my couch just...
That's a good song.
That's a great song.
It's a good wedding song.
And that was our groomsmen sang with you because Heath wanted to sing. And I was like, I don't think this is the time for you. And he, of course, sobbed. So I was glad that he made the choice to not sing.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go in a direction because you and I have talked a little bit over this last year. But then even before this, I feel like this has been a theme throughout our lives, something that Cron are passionate about and that you've always been passionate about, just community.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I want to talk about your community in this season.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about your community and what that has looked like over the last year.
My parents were community driven. I grew up in community. I don't know where it came from, like having kind of talked to my mom about it over the years. Like, she's like, my grandfather was super extroverted and had his people, but my dad was an Air Force officer, and so there was movement, and my mom had to kind of rebuild herself. At 18, she moved from her little hometown to Boston and had to just invent this life, right? So she introduced community. I think she pushed my dad into community the way I pushed Heath into community, and that's all we knew. My parents had a small group before a small group was a thing. They rotated from house to house every week, and the kids got to come down for dessert, and then we dispersed. And so that's all I knew. If someone was sick, we took a meal. My mom had a sewing group, and we met at parks for play dates like that. It's truly all I knew. I did not know people did it differently. And so I knew that. And also my parents lived decently transparent lives, even as that generation, right? I probably have pushed that boundary a little bit more. But so I did not think there was another way to do it, and knew that that's how my family was going to go. And Heath grew up very differently in abuse. And when you grow up in abuse, you don't have people in, you don't invite people close. And he remembers me saying at one point, like, no husband of mine or no family of mine or my family is going to look like this. And he said, I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm that one, but if I want to marry someone like her, I'm going to have to figure this out. I'm going to have to get a hold of community and transparency and authenticity. And so there was a time in our family where the kids would come home and be like, what's for dinner and who's coming? That was just kind of how it was. Like, it's funny to talk about because I just don't know a different way. But, we talk about marriage being hard and we talk about parenting being hard, but nobody talks about relationships and friendships being hard. Like, you have to work and you have a choice to fight and lose them, which I think our culture does. Like, we have a disagreement and we move on instead of going, no, actually our relationship is worth fighting for, just like my marriage is worth fighting for. And so we just dug into community. It's all we know. It's all we've ever done. And have just walked that. We've worked hard at it. I also have a personality where I can do lots of people on a deep level. Heath was very different in that, you know, because we're all opposites, right? And so he's like, I'm really good with these three going deep. I do think that changed over the years. He became a little bit more extroverted than I ever thought he would be. But I don't know anything different than just dig in.
Yeah. So how has your community rallied around you in this last year?
Exactly how they should have.
Okay.
I mean, truly, like, I think you asked me, like, how has your community surprised you? There's not been one surprise.
I love
not
that.
one. It's exactly.
What do you mean by that? Like,
I
there's
actually
not been
said,
a surprise.
I actually said to Carl this morning, this was our Super Bowl, right? This is what we've been training for, is to be able to get through a tragedy like this, right? Is we have been in close contact and we've talked about the hard stuff, and they knew our hearts and they knew our marriage and they knew, I mean, there was no doubt, like, how is Jill going to survive this? Like, he was the best part of her, right? And so there was never a doubt, like, we've got to figure this out. We do have, like, one couple in our lives that years ago we sat down with them and they said, if something happens to us, this is the plan. They are the ones that really got that started for us. Okay. If I die, I need you to be en route to Jacqueline within 3 hours. And I need you to, like, there was this very specific plan.
You had this very specific talk.
Amazing. Of this is how death is going to go for us. Now, they own, like, caregiving, and so they deal with death all the time.
A little bit of their world.
Right.
Okay.
And so they got us very comfortable talking about death.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then when you have a heart attack, you are face to face with it. But so I knew that night that Heath died, I got the call from JL and he said, I'm pissed and I'm angry and I'm going to go there eventually. But right now I need to know if you want me in Florida or if you want me to wait for you in Charleston. And so it was already in motion. Like, this is what we planned for. Right. Like, you know, almost like those old fashioned, like, baby story, you know, like, and go contraction. Yeah. So it felt a lot like that. Like, our people just mobilized, and our friends, Chris and Stacy, which has been an interesting story. Our relationship was decently broken at the time. We walked through some really hard stuff and hadn't really healed. And they were the first ones in the car to Florida. And they got there and she just said, you would have done the same thing. You would have done the same thing. Yeah. And you put it aside, and we've since had the conversation and we've talked through things, but you put it aside and you put out the most important fire, right? And then you start working. But there was no surprise for me. This is why you're in community. We've celebrated the highs, and we'll do that with graduation in a few weeks and watching my kid go to college and work. He's worked so hard and done all these great things. And so we'll celebrate that together. But then we're going to dig into the pain too, right? And the key, though, is you have to live like, you have to live in a place where there's no doubt they knew what I'm gonna need before I needed it. And so it just has to work that way.
This is the second time will come up in recent times on the podcast, because we've talked with our friends Daniel and Jamie that they lost a child.
Yeah.
But they talked about a similar thing, is like the people that just kind of like said, hey, let me know if you need anything. Right. They meant well. Right. But it was the people that were already in their lives who knew them well enough to know, I don't need to ask what you need. Right. I already know. Right. Yeah. I can maybe get some clarity. Do you want me to be? I'm going to be somewhere. Do you want me to be in Charleston or Florida? Right. But it was the people that just showed up. It's like, hey, I'm here to minister mercy, and kindness, and presence to you. You know, and that's the life. That's your people fill their roles, right? Like, every night that week after Heath died, JL would get us all around the table and be like, here are the 10 things that need to be done tomorrow. Who's doing what? You got that? You got that? And I remember him looking at me saying, okay, listen, tomorrow is obituary day. We have to write this obituary. I'm going to be at this table at 9 o'clock. Do whatever you have to do before 9 o'clock. But I want you here at 9 o'clock. We will be finished by noon. We can take a break at 11. But we have to do this. Like, it's going to suck and we're going to cry it out, but this has to be done tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And he was like, because I'm assuming you want to write this. Like, I'm not assuming you want to put this in the hands of a funeral home. So, and that's what happened. I got myself together. I was at the table at 9 and we were done by 11:45. Right. And then
he took off and ran payroll for my company, right? So just like, you know, what has to be done, and from the practical to the emotional. I started laughing at one point. I'm like, if one more person walks out of this room and takes a phone call, I'm gonna lose my mind. What are you people talking about? Like, what is going on behind the scenes that I don't know about? And there was a ton of it. The funeral bill was being paid, and this was being done. Like, all of this stuff was happening behind the scenes that and I don't know that I still know all the things that happened.
What's going on? It seems like quite a scene. And it's like it's a nightmare to even think about. Yeah. But then I think about, like, I mean, your kids. What's going on with your kids in these first few days of losing their dad? Yeah,
the kids took their personalities, right? Like, Will immediately closed off. In fact, we were in Florida for him to do his college tour at the University of Florida, and so Heath died on Monday, and the tour was on Tuesday, and he woke up and he was like, I'm going to go ahead and go. I mean, just like nothing had happened. And I was like, oh. And again, knowing everyone grieves differently, I was like, okay. And he was like, yeah, I got to be there in like an hour. I'm just going to, and I was like, who's going with you? He's like, I'm just going by myself. And I was like, yeah, no, no. And I was like, and Heath's family had come at that point, and I was like, why don't you call Uncle Trevor and see if he'll go with you? And so they went, and that's how he handled it. Like, oh, it's good to see everybody. Like, you know,
what a sweet thing for Heath's brother to do.
I know. I can't even imagine. I mean, I can't even imagine what he was.
I'm going to cry thinking about that.
Yeah. So he did it. And Micah, right around the age of like 10 or 11, we went through a really hard time with Micah. Like, I wanted to give him away to another family. And, but we got help and we started working on it. And the first thing he said was, I'm so glad I got my junk together. Like, he was able to kind of bury Heath in peace because they had reached this really cool spot of understanding and had healed a lot. And then Lydia is just an outward processor, so there was lots of tears and
dancing.
There was lots of memorial dances for things. I
love that.
Oh my Lord. And then it was like, can I call this person? And can I call, like, she wanted to tell everybody. And the boys were like, please stop. You know, why should she do that? I'm like, because that's, so but all their people came into, right? Because all of my people have their people. And so they were then surrounded by their friends. Micah will say, he called his best friend Mason, and he said, he didn't say a word. We just sat on the phone for an hour. And so he was there, and my friend Leanne was saying that Mason was like, I don't know. What am I doing? I don't know what to say. You know, and she's like, don't say anything. So that's what Micah needed. I don't want your trite words. I don't want you to say anything dumb. Just sit shiva with me, right? Yeah. Like, let's get back to grief. And so, but they all kind of just took their personalities and enjoyed their people. Like, that's the hard thing about this is, you know, you've been to funerals and you're like, I haven't seen you in 50 years. Why do we wait till a funeral? And but there's a beauty in that, and being reunited with people you don't see all the time. So being able to find the joy in the middle of the crap. So
you mentioned Micah's friend, like, not knowing what to say. I think a lot of people are that way. Like what you'd said, Carl, about how I don't know what to say or do, so I'm just gonna send you a Facebook message. I'm thinking about you, and then that's it, or whatever, for fear of saying the wrong thing. Right. But would you say that saying something and doing something is better than just being absent?
Yeah. My kids and I have talked a lot about this, just because Micah is he's very much like Heath in that, like, I would rather say nothing than say something stupid. So he's thoughtful about his words, unlike the rest of our family, and we just say whatever we want and make up for it later.
I have never done anything.
Right.
I have to stop and say that if I were married to a woman, I'm not married to a man, this might go in a terrible direction. I shouldn't have said it that way, but Jill is the female version of you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
She's absolutely a very good worship leader.
Yes. Right.
She's a good songwriter.
Everything she said
she's incredibly
when we're together,
funny.
I'm like,
I love
Carl
this girl.
is exact, or even thing. I'm Heath.
You are Heath,
because she was like, Heath is so slow to change, and I was like, just make a decision.
Make a decision.
Give me a freaking break.
And I'm like, I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, sorry.
But this happens a lot too in our relationships, in our close relationships. Heath was most like usually like the women, and I was most like the man. And so that happened frequently.
Micah, and saying the wrong. He didn't want to say the wrong.
So we had lots of conversations around it, and we all came to the agreement that we realized everyone was well intentioned, and that's where I wanted to get my kids. Like, yes, people say stupid things, but for the most part, people aren't saying dumb things. They're not saying dumb things. They're saying loaded things like, "How are you?" Which
right. How much time do you have?
Right. Yeah. Which is an appropriate question. I learned very early, like, to actually listen to that question, and not that I had to answer you really how I was, but I need to take stock of how I am. Like, really, at the end of the day, how am I? Yeah. So I did a lot. Like, so I might go to my car and go, how am I today? And it was a personal thing for myself, because I would probably say to you, fine, because that's really how I was. Yeah. I was fine. Like, I don't know what you want me to be, but I'm not awesome, and I'm not dead. So I'm fine.
Yeah.
I have tried to find better ways of answering that question. My most truest answer is fine.
Yes.
But that is very unsatisfactory to people.
Yes, truly. And people go, this is what I would get. How are the head tilt for those of you who aren't watching? It's the head tilt, like, and I know it's coming. Yeah. Oh yeah, here it comes. I just can't imagine. And which I want to say, you don't need to imagine.
Right.
This is not for you to imagine. I didn't imagine this a year ago either. Yeah. Like, sit back and don't imagine it. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Allow yourself to go there if you need to. Okay. But yeah, I think saying something, and give me a memory. Tell me something that Heath, like, that's what I sit in, right? Like, like this one time Heath, da-da-da-da-da. Like, tell me all the things about the goodness of who he was.
Yeah.
What a cool piece of wisdom.
Yeah.
Give me a memory.
Give me a memory. Give me a story.
Yeah.
Tell me something that I didn't know.
Yeah.
That just helps to perpetuate
there have been
how much love there is for this guy.
There has been so much that I didn't know about him, which has been such a joy to realize just how good he was. He just was good. And it's not like a death confession. He really was just a great man. And I don't know that I met anybody that didn't like him. Yeah. I mean, me, on the other hand, you understand that.
I do.
Yeah. Heath was great. Jill.
I'm an acquired taste.
Right. Acquired taste. Okay, no, you said something that struck a chord with me, because we've had conversations about this. You said, don't imagine this. You shouldn't imagine this, because it's not something that obviously everybody's going to go through.
Correct.
Or it's just the unimaginable. However, we have had conversations about grief and how there are some things that you did that you didn't even know to prepare for grief in, like, from the emotional standpoint, from the mental, from the spiritual. Yeah. Talk about those things.
Yeah. I mean, this is a podcast in itself, but emotionally, like, let me back up. Spiritually, in 2005, like 20 years ago, we had just moved to Florida. I joined this Bible study called Apples of Gold. It was 7 older women, 7 younger women. Do you know it?
Study.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And all of us younger women had just moved to Gainesville. We had no friends. We're just like clawing. Some of us had young babies. Some, we're just in that season of life. And I remember sitting around the table, and the women started to tell their story, right? I lost a child in a car accident. I was a widow when my kids were 2 and 3. Like, they all began to tell their stories, and we left, and the girls were like, that was so inspiring. And I remember sitting in my car thinking, my thing is coming. My thing is coming. And the Lord said to me, get your junk together, because your thing is coming. And that was when I began this journey of, like, not just knowing the promises of God, but knowing the promise keeper, right? Mm-hmm. I want to know the character of God, because there's no way that these women would survive just knowing a promise. It's not good enough to know I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I need to know the Christ who strengthens me. Okay. And so I began this process. Did I know it would take 20 years? That I would need it? No. But there was this 20 years of sowing into the Lord and getting to know who he was so that it would carry me through this. And I would say the biggest way to prepare for your grief is in your wholeness and your relationship with Jesus, period. Because I think this is where bitter, angry old people come from, is Jesus didn't live up to the promises. God didn't, he didn't come through for me, right? And I have struggled with the we need a miracle songs, right? Because where was mine? Where was my miracle?
Yeah.
There were thousands of people praying in those hours.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
And I said to you this morning, like, you can never convince me. Jesus can never convince me that this was his best for me. He won't be able to, right?
Yeah.
Now he's going to make good out of it, and I'm going to see beautiful things, which I already have. But I'm just never going to go.
But you want your husband back.
This was great. I want my husband back.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So to be able to just be in a place where in the middle of my temper tantrum, I know that he is there.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would have known that 20 years ago. I would have felt betrayed. I would have felt lost. I would have felt like the promises were for other people. But the God of the mountain and the God of the valley are very different gods to me now. God of the valley has gone toe to toe with me and has been patient and kind and listened and absorbed and waited until I was ready to hear the things I needed to hear. And the God of the mountain is different. The God of the mountain is like, let's go, and you need to get into action, and you need to, like, here we are together. But the God of the valley is like, whenever you're ready. Yeah. And he's allowed me, but I would not have known that if 20 years ago we hadn't dug in together. Yeah. So that's number one. And then getting your community together, like, get these people in place, have hard conversations. Like, it's okay to talk about death. Because you talk about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I feel so much more prepared. I know that he said, if anything ever happens to us, take the kids to Disney and go on a trip with your friends. Guess what we're doing tomorrow? Spoiler alert, children, we're on to Disney tomorrow.
It won't air.
It's right. It'll already be a surprise.
When this comes out.
They don't know.
We'll have to see how it went.
Yeah, exactly. So being able to just kind of check the boxes. And I hear people say all the time, like, if my husband died, I wouldn't even know where our bank was. Well, guess what you need to do? You need to figure out where your bank is. If my wife died, I wouldn't know how to do car pickup. Get in the car tomorrow and go do car pickup. Like, learn the things and you're not going to know it all. There's no way that I can fill all the holes that Heath filled. But we did enough to know, I think he would go, I'm really proud of you. You're doing a great job. So those are what do you need to hear from Carl to know you're doing a great job?
Yeah.
What could he tell you today that if you lost him, you would know I'm on the right track, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
And that's just like it's just like daily deposits. It's not these grand gestures.
Absolutely.
It's just a little, it's just a little bit of a deposit.
Yeah. And giving myself grace to know this is how our family worked, but I'm going to do it differently. Right. Like, giving myself grace. This Disney trip is not at all how Heath would have done it. Now, are we going to spend the same amount of money? Yes, but I'm doing a one-day trip with the VIP tour, and he would plan a week, but I was looking at our schedule thinking, we don't have a week.
Yeah.
We got to get this kid on this mission trip and this kid. We don't have a week. I'm doing it my way. So I'm fulfilling the thing, but I'm doing it with my own stamp on it. And you have to get to that point where you're okay going, I know Heath would never have done it this way. We've gone through a lot with with Lydia's dance studio this year. And I know I've handled it differently than Heath would have. Mm-hmm. But I'm okay with that. Like, he trusted me with our kids. Like, he trusted me with our family. And so, as much as I actually think it probably would have been harder if Heath was around. We would have had lots of discussions about it, lots of conversations around it. We would have had asked lots of questions and bless. So there is a piece of like, no, I'm handling it my way. We're going to do this way. Yeah.
So. We had a conversation earlier this morning before we turn on the mics. Ask you how do you process things, but like I almost get a little put off by that question because like process things differently. What does that really mean? Right. You talked about working on your marriage with Heath and you guys investing for a day when maybe you're empty nesters and you traveled more and you had your income was redistributed towards doing fun stuff instead of paying for dance lessons, all of that kind of stuff. And Heather and I do, we think about the same thing, and we have this podcast and we're talking about here's some tips for communication, here's how to work in your sex life, and but it all really boils down to like there is no way to insulate yourself from just boom circumstances. Bombs go off. No matter how hard you work on your marriage, there is something just around the corner that's going to shake us to our core. And no podcast episode is going to be enough to get you through it. And I said something to you. I said, we talk in this marriage and family space, and it's like you can be tempted just to make everything happy and everything easy. But like, I do not want to do that, because like, if you position marriage as that, it's a fool's errand.
Right.
And I said, marriage is not a happiness machine. And your response to me was what?
It's to make you holy. It's to make you holy. It is to make you holy. And I think that we learned that pretty early on. I mean, every day in marriage, you're face to face with your sin, right? Mm-hmm. I'm selfish. I'm prideful. I put myself above you. My kids are annoying me. Like, you're face to face with your sin every day. And so your choice is, do I conform to the sin, or do I confess it and become more like Jesus? And if marriage is the representation of the gospel, it's the greatest representation we have of the gospel. And so the people around me need to see the forgiveness. They need to see the anger that goes away. They need to see the slow to speak and the patience, and they need to see all of that. And so, yeah, we were preparing for the next, truly, we would talk like how excited we were to get rid of our children, because we worked so hard and we liked each other, and we're like, what is this gonna be like? We can walk around naked all the time, and like all of those things. And so there was a part of me that was that I'm angry. Yeah. I am angry. Like, this is what we prepared for, but not because it was gonna make us happy, but I could see the difference in Heath. Like, the Lord had refined him and grown him and changed him, and me as well, right? But you don't see it in yourself quite as much. But knowing that, he was 21 when we got married, right? So being able to go, wow, you became like this real man, right? And you led a family and you did all that stuff, but not because we were always happy, but because we were face to face with, Heath would say probably his biggest pet peeve in life was to watch men who got married still continue to live as a bachelor, right? No. This day marked you. Just like you graduate from high school and you don't go back to your high school, right? You're done. That's how singleness and marriage works. Like, today is your marriage, today is your wedding day, and it's marked you, and you are now no longer who you were yesterday. You are now a full-fledged married man, and you have to start acting as such. And so that was his biggest pet peeve. Like, he's just living like a bachelor. Like, he doesn't have a wife and kids that care or have anything they want to do with their life. And so he just really lived this life of I'm painting this really amazing picture of my husband who drove me crazy on a daily, but really wanted to live out holiness and what did that look like daily. But it wasn't happy. We weren't always happy. Yeah. So, yeah.
You're holy.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah.
You are, some friendships are seasonal. Friends come into your life for a season, they leave. And you are a lifelong friend for me. The Lord has put you in my life.
Heath was such a good man. I loved him so much, and he was a good friend to so many. You talked about loss of a spouse, loss of our friend, and now we're sitting here with you, and we wish Heath was here with us.
Yeah.
I wish Heath was here on this episode.
Yeah,
and he's not.
Right.
Where is the gospel in that?
Where is the gospel? The gospel is in. So Heath was a musician. He was a singer, and will say his time with you was so transformative, by the way. Such a beautiful time for him with you and Stephen at Christ Covenant in those crazy days. But so worship is really difficult for me to sit in music. And, yesterday there were baptism, and there was just a lot of death. Where's your sting? And Easter is my lifeline. Like, I have lived almost 365 Easters, right? That to juggle on a daily the sorrow and the happiness and the thankfulness and the joy and the anger. And, at my Easter post, I just said, I think Mary and I could have some really serious conversations at this point. Like, how do you as a mom walk through watching this transpire? And not obviously that I was Heath's mom, but that same feeling of Easter. And I think that's the gospel is that is my lifeline, right? I don't know what it looks like. People always say, Heath is looking down on you. I'm like, that's weird. I don't think that's what's happening. I don't know what the heavenly reunion looks like. My friend Stacy was like, yeah, what if you get up there and he's like, hey girl? I'm like, Mom, no, like, surely there's a hug or something. Like,
he calls you by your first name.
Yeah, how you been, Jill? Great job, kid. But like, but that, yeah, but that's my lifeline. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I have to, and have I doubted and have I thought, what if it's not real? Yeah. But I have to hang my hat on the fact that he ran the race and well done and check the box. Like, I think that's the intersection of the gospel, is the pain and the sorrow and the hurt and the joy all together, but knowing at the end of the day that well done. And
and that the resurrection is a hope that will not disappoint.
I've said that daily. And I find truly, like, the more authentic I am with the Lord, the more hope he gives me every time. Wow. The harder the tears and the uglier the curse word.
Say that again, the more authentic.
The more authentic I am, the more hope he gives me. Mm-hmm. And the more I cry and the more I scream and the more I point my finger and blame, the more he goes, and I have you. I have you. So that's the gospel. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So.
It's a good place to stop.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
We love to pray for you.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you need somebody to pray for you, Heather and I pray every week for marriages. You can send your discreet and private prayer request to hi@carlandheather.com. We will pray for you. We won't share your business out with anybody, but we will join you in praying for your marriage and for your family and for whatever thing you're going through. Jill, thanks for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's incredible. Stay connected with us, carlandheather.com. We'll see you next time.
Together on purpose.
Together on purpose. That's what we say, Jill.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. You also
I don't
get a
know
fist
how to,
bump.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.